Hey there, new community supports folks. We're excited to have you as a part of our team. We're getting ready to jump into training here. This will hopefully take just a few minutes of your time. We're super excited to be having you as a part of our community supports family. So today's training is going to be going over the basics of community supports and getting you trained specifically to work with the participants that you'll be working with. We're going to be looking at how community supports fits in the Lord's legacy. What is community support? Some of the guidelines, some emergencies, and what I took the position here at All right, let's do a quick introduction here. My name is Lee Sharp, and I started with Lord's Legacy back in 2015 in the position that I am training you for today. So I was a direct support professional working one-on-one in community supports. You can see down here, I've got my wife and my two kids and my third on the way. This is Jasper, Piper, and Tess. My co-manager is Amanda Groves. Her and her husband, Ben, are over here. She started working at Lord's Legacy in 2016 as a direct support professional as well. So how does community supports fit into Lord's Legacy? We've got three main departments at Lord's Legacy. We have our residential homes, where they are staffed 24/7, where we have residents living in homes all around the area. We have our day training center, where they're doing continued education. It's actually right next door to my office here. And this is where they do everything from history lessons to science to cooking to all of those daily living skills. And then there's finally community supports, which I would say is like the mobile version of day training. While you are working here, your title will be a DSP or a direct support professional, and you're going to provide a one-on-one support. So what is community supports? Community supports, like we said, is a one-on-one support for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our goal here is, like our main mission, is to love like Jesus, challenge to grow, and equip to thrive. We do that through everyday supports. So your supports are going to help them engage in the community through a variety of activities, goals, shopping, events, concerts, festivals, errands, walking dogs, cooking classes, swimming, window shopping, job hunting, and just everyday life. As we're working to love like Jesus, challenge them to continue to grow in their skills, and then equipping everyone to thrive. So how does a participant start off and get services? A typical participant is going to start off in the education system at schools. They then are able to graduate out of that, moving out of high school. They then typically would apply for a waiver in the state of Kentucky. That waiver is an allotment amount of money that is given so that they can provide services and pay their staff. So after applying for the waiver, they get given a case manager, who's a very important person in the participant's life. That case manager shops around the different providers. We are one of those providers to provide services. And then that person receives support from that providers that the case manager is shopping around and looking at. So what are all the different kinds of waiver services? Well, there are, like we said, a waiver is just an allotment of money that's used for services. There are three main ones that we work with here. There is the supports for community living. That is the main one there that a lot of people are going for. There is the Michelle P. waiver, and then there is the state guardian funds. So with supports for community living, this is going to include things like residential supports. All of our residential folks that are living in the homes have this waiver. They can receive day training. They can help with supported employment, which is something that we help with. Everything that's starred on here is something that we work with. There's also community access and then the residential home care. If you can also be on that waiver, if you're living with a guardian or relative, you can have day training, which then we also help with supported employment, personal assistance, and then respite. With the Michelle P. waiver or the state guardian funds, they are very similar. That's going to be where you are living with a guardian or relative. You're not receiving residential supports, but you can get things like day training and supported employment and community living supports and then respite. So these supports are, supported employment is going to be basically helping people find jobs and working those jobs. Community supports is, again, like we've been saying, going out and working on those daily living skills. And then respite is just quite simply being able to take care and rest at home. Next section here is providing supports. A typical day in community supports is what we're going to work through here. So all community support services have goals to help guide those supports. Those services are paid through the state. So that state waiver, that allotment of money, the state requires us to meet certain standards to be able to get reimbursed for that. Those standards come through goals. So goals are going to vary from participant to participant in number and type. Some participants are going to have 2 or 3 goals. Some of them are going to have 15 goals. It all depends on how ambitious they're being. Goals can be as general as healthy eating goals, living healthy living goals, being able to eat healthier, exercise, social and community involvement, working on just verbal skills, or getting involved with volunteer or groups in the community. They could also budget goals, so working on saving money and not saving money, spending money, all the things in between, being able to price compare. So goals and objectives, those should be actively worked on, because again, that's what the state is paying us to do, is work on those goals. It may not be possible to meet every goal every shift, especially for those people that have 15 goals, but we want to be able to work on every goal on a regular basis. We don't want anything not being regularly addressed. So an example of what a typical day may look like, you may start the day off at the participant's home or at day training and talk about what you want to do and accomplish that day. In the morning, it might be go to Walmart, look at some of the new movies and the cost, what they might be, something they're interested in picking up, and that's going to help maybe meet some budget goals. They might go to Taco Bell for lunch and discuss healthy eating there, whether they're going to get a soda versus a water, and just working on health goals there. They might go to the park. After that, work on playing some disc golf and talk with some walkers, which is going to help meet some exercise goals, healthy eating and living, and then along with some social goals. And then you might end the day back at the participant's home or even back at day training, depending on what that person's services are and what they're looking for. As you get to know your participants, you'll know more specifically what their daily schedules look like and the things that they're interested in doing as they go out and about. So some guidelines as you all are going out. We want to make sure that there's two big things that we're covering, and that is going to be care for the participant and then making sure that supports are participant centered. Care for the participant is going to be making sure that they are safe while they are out and about, not getting into dangerous situations, but then also we want to make sure that our supports are participant centered. That means that the participant is helping direct the supports. We're not just ordering people around and telling them what to do all day. The participants are actually advocating for themselves and pushing for what they want to do. So for some of your participants, this will come easier than others, and others may require some creativity, flexibility, and redirection. As the staff, you should guide your participants to make appropriate, healthy choices for activities that encourage and challenge them in working on goals. And then finally, as you're learning, your participant is going to help guide those said supports. Some activities, do's and don'ts. So as you're out in the community, there are things that we want you to focus on, things that we want you to avoid. So we'll start with the don'ts and then go to the positives. We don't want you to take a participant to your home. You don't need to be spending any time at your personal residence with a participant. We don't want you to spend all day at the participant's home. We are community supports. We want you to be able to get out in the community, go to some parks, be able to spend some time outdoors. We don't want to get stuck in a routine with no effort to get out. Routines are wonderful and good, and they help provide stability, but also if we never try anything new, we're not going to grow. We don't want to be watching TV or playing video games all day. Again, we want to be engaging. We also don't want to be playing games on a phone or working on non-goal related activities. We want to make sure that we're focused in on those goals and we're not just getting distracted by whatever the latest updates are on the internet. So things to focus on. We want to go and find free local activities, whether that's fairs, holiday events, going to the park, going to some walking trails, going out to the mall, or go watch the horses train at Keeneland, or going to some of the local libraries. We also want to find ways to interact with others and join groups, whether that's art classes, theater groups, getting disc golf, just walking groups, and jumping in with bowling and different things like that. With volunteering, we want to make sure that we're looking at animal shelters, homeless shelters, the Ronald McDonald House, all the different places that you can go, and many of our participants I've gone to and continue to help support. Ideally, we also want to be mindful of guardian wishes no matter what. Again, it doesn't matter how many papers we read, guardians and parents are always going to know a whole lot more about their loved ones than we are. So with a participant-centered approach here, we're going to look at a participant-centered team. So while you're providing supports, you're going to come in contact and coordinate with a few different departments and people involved in the participant's life. We mentioned the case manager earlier, who's the person who helps set their services up and keeps those going. Your participant may have a behavior support specialist. If they have some behaviors that they're wanting to work on, they have a specialist that works with them. You want to work closely with that person. Again, you want to work also with therapists as they're working with them as well. If they're in our residential homes, you want to make sure that you're communicating with the residential staff, figure out how their day's been going so far. With day training, same way, figuring out how their day's going so far, or with other direct support professionals. So if your participant has more than one direct support professional staff, make sure that you're in communication with them. That way, if different things are going on or you got different activities that you all aren't crossing, you want to make sure that you all are getting everything done there. Make sure to communicate with parents, siblings, or their family, and then also with the community support managers, myself and Amanda. All of these people play a role in the participant's life and get together once a year. Usually it's around the participant's birthday or the time that they receive services for what's called a plan of care meeting. At that meeting, they discuss how the past year went, all of the goals that we worked on in that past year, what went well, what didn't go well, and then we look at the new year and we say, what new goals do we want to achieve and work on in this new year? And so participants actually help form the goals that you see as you get to know your participants and you learn their goals, and know that they helped form those goals along with their family and everybody else on this big list here. With supervision, we want to make sure that you know that you are responsible for the safety and care of your participants while you all are out together. So all of our participants are at a higher risk for abuse, neglect, exploitation, isolation, and punishment. We want to make sure that supervision is going to look a little different from participant to participant, but you should never leave a participant without any type of supervision at a location alone. You want to allow the participant to have as much independence as possible, but maintaining appropriate supervision to ensure their health, safety, and care. Again, that's the balance of the person-centered supports versus making sure that it's also participant-centered. So while dropping your participant off with a staff or a parent, you want to make sure that both parties are aware of the exchange. So if I'm dropping somebody off with you, I'm going to make sure that I'm making eye contact with you. I'm waving at you. I'm giving you a head nod. We're having a conversation. I don't ever want to just pull up to somebody's house, let them get out of the car, and then just assume that they made it inside. Even if I watch them walk in the door, I need to wave at somebody. I need to let them know. Because depending on the participant and the parents and whether if it's a two-story house, if somebody's upstairs, downstairs, all the different things that could go wrong there, just make sure that you are communicating with whoever you are dropping a participant off with. And then finally, whenever dropping off at our day training center, make sure again that you're communicating with the staff that are over there. With communication also, we want to make sure that you're staying in communication with us. My main mode of communication is going to be through our phone here at the office or email. We want you to always return phone calls and emails within a timely manner. Emails are typically within a day. Usually the reason that we want you to do that is because we want to make sure that you know what's happening in the participant's life. If it's a phone call, it's usually something more urgent. Somebody might be sick and we're trying to call you to give you a heads up, or something more urgent is happening. We love questions, suggestions, and feedback. If there's ever a point where you notice a problem, you have full permission to say something. Let us know about it. Give us a heads up. Shoot us an email. Whatever you need to do to get a hold. So with schedules, we're going to do our best to meet your desired hours and then also with our participants' needs. So that's what we do to match up the hours there. Any changes to your schedule should be requested in writing and are not guaranteed. Requests off must be requested 2 weeks in advance. This gives us time to be able to communicate with both the family and other staff who could possibly cover. Any last minute changes, we want you to communicate first with the participant's family and then with us directly after that. If you've got any emergency call-offs, we want you to communicate that with the participant's family and then with your supervisor as well. If it's after hours, call the on-call phone and let them know as well. We don't ever want to just spring that on people, and the more heads up that we can give families, the easier it's going to be for them to adjust their schedules if they need to. If a holiday occurs on the day that you were scheduled, you are still required to work. I put that in there mostly for the smaller holidays that come up. Everything, we're not asking you to work on Easter and we're not asking you to work on Christmas, but I'm saying the smaller holidays, whether that's Independence Day or any other small holiday, we want to make sure that we don't just assume that we're off. It's always good to check in with families, and even around Christmas time, making sure to check in with families to let them know about any sort of travel plans that you might have. With incident reports, we want to make sure that any sort of incident that occurs while you are out, anything that involves blood is going to be an incident report, but all incidents should be reported to your supervisor. Should you think that an incident occurs, we want you to call your supervisor. If it's after hours, call on call at 859-797-5300. Incident reporting is time sensitive and should be done as soon as safely possible. So if you're in a situation, make sure everybody's safe and then call us. If you're unsure if something is an incident, give us a call anyway. I'd rather us have a conversation and then we decide that it's not, than something not get reported. There's going to be no stigma to incident reporting. If anything comes along your time where somebody gets hurt, there's emergency people called, whether that's a policeman or a fireman, we need to know about it because that's going to be an incident report. You're not going to get in any sort of trouble for that. We just want to make sure that everything gets reported. With PRN shifts, PRN is an abbreviation of the Latin phrase. It means pro re nata. It translates to as needed. It's typically used in the medical field, but here at Lord's Legacy, we use it to, well, as needed shifts as they come up. Other DSPs may request off, and we do our best to try and fill those shifts so that participants don't go without services. And so we want to make sure that we can do that. So you may be asked to try and fill in for some of those services. PRN shifts are completely voluntary. You do not have to accept what we call and ask you, but we always are going to call and ask just to make sure. And if you say no, don't worry. We'll call you again later on to see if you're interested in another shift coming up later. Finally, participants' families here. As you get to know your families, you're most likely going to grow close to your families and become a part of their lives. We're expecting you to keep in touch within reason with your families about schedule changes and services. Families sometimes like to hear how services are going at the end of a shift. Give them a heads up, mom or dad at the end. It's your supervisor's job to help mediate between you and the families if necessary. So if there's a point where there's a point of conflict or different things, we want you to never accept a shift or change of shift prior to approval from your supervisor. A lot of our participants have an allotted number of hours that they can get each week. We don't want to go over that because that's where our billing is coming from, and that's how we're paying you, our staff. And we want to check with the families to see if they have some other accommodations that they can work on there. You want to always maintain a professional relationship with your families. Your primary role in participants' life is to help them love, challenge, and grow, which means that you are not just a taxi or a babysitting service. You are there to help them work on goals. Finally, with documentation here, documentation is going to include timesheets and daily notes. We're going to be going over this in another training, but your daily notes are going to communicate on behalf of the participants. They're going to be reflecting of what your work is doing. And then we want those notes completed when the information is fresh. These daily notes are what we use to bill our state so that we can get money back so that we can pay you and keep our organization running and continue to serve those in our population. With documentation also, we use what's called Oasis Technologies Group. This is an online form that you fill out each day for the participant. This is also where you'll record timesheets. All of these timesheets, we want to make sure that they are in before Tuesday for the previous week. So this previous week here, that's Sunday through Saturday, we want to make sure that everything is in before Tuesday. Ideally, though, you're going to be doing it at the end of your shift. As we're getting started, we're excited to have you as a part of community supports. If you have any questions, let us know. If you think that we could improve training in any way, as you're shadowing and connecting with your participants, make sure to connect with other staff as you shadow. And then let us know if you're ever uncomfortable in a situation that you're working. We also, here we have an email that goes out every week called the Monday News Flash. It's got all kinds of information about activities, different events going on in the community, and just everything in between that we want to make sure that you are prepared for everything community supports related. Thanks so much, guys, and welcome to the team.